All right, welcome everyone. I call the March 17, 2021 Planning Commission meeting to order. The main purpose of tonight's meeting is a study session addressing the Canyon Park Subarea Plan Implementation Bonus Incentive Plan options. Before we move on to the agenda items, I'd like to acknowledge our remote meeting format. As with our previous meeting, the commissioners and the staff will be participating via Zoom. Under Governor Inslee's Proclamation 20-28 regarding open public meetings, this meeting will be held remotely. Public comment will be allowed both in writing and orally. The Imagine Bothell notice, city website, and tonight's agenda all provided information to the public for providing comments. People wishing to comment were instructed to notify staff or provide written comments by 3 p.m. today. A video of this meeting will be streamed live as well as recorded and available for later viewing on the City of Bothell YouTube channel. A call-in number was provided on the meeting agenda for members of the public who wish to call in by phone and listen live to the meeting. For our phone-in callers, during staff presentations, staff will make every effort to specify which materials they're referencing so that everyone can follow along. Those who provided advance notice are able to make comments under the audience comment portion of the meeting. An email was encouraged and will be acknowledged. At this point, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the attendance of the commissioners. We have Commissioner Dodd.
Present.
Commissioner Curd.
Here.
Commissioner Gustafson.
Here.
And Commissioner Alderks.
Present.
Note that Commissioner Pystrup is absent and excused. This would have been Commissioner Pystrup's last meeting in his term, which was expiring this month. And I'd like to recognize him and thank him for his participation. Sorry we couldn't do that directly to him in person, but we do appreciate the time he has spent. We also have a new member who was appointed just last night, but it was kind of short notice to get her involved in this meeting. We expect to see her, we hope to see her in our subsequent meetings. That'd be Claire Robeson. And she was filling in her expired term, so she started immediately. So lastly, in addition, Community Development Director Mike Cotterman and Senior Planner Nathan Lamb are in attendance. Lastly, before we begin, I'd like to reiterate some guidelines. For all meeting attendees, please speak clearly and pause frequently. State your name each time before speaking. Mute your microphone when not speaking. And unmute your microphone when you choose not to speak. If you are also streaming the live video feed, please turn the sound off as there is a delay. For commissioners, at specific breaks in the presentation, I will be calling on members who wish to speak or ask a question. And if you want to speak, please try to get my attention. I think we should be able to see you all on the ribbon, but sometimes it is a challenge when the ribbon goes across and some people are not on it. This will avoid the problem of having two people speaking at the same time. Identify yourself before you ask a question, make a motion or second a motion, or participate in debate. And please mute your microphone again when not speaking. So the first item on the agenda is public comment in keeping with Governor Inslee's Emergency Proclamation 20-28 regarding public gatherings and open public meetings. The city has accepted visitor comment in writing as well as accepted sign-up sheets for those who wish to speak at tonight's meeting. Written comments submitted to staff no longer than 3 p.m. today were forwarded to all commissioners and are part of the record. Director Cotterman, would you let us know if there were any comments received?
No comments were received, Mr. Chair, and I don't show anyone in the waiting room to speak either.
Okay, so we will then move on. Our next item is the approval of the minutes. We have before us the minutes of the March 3rd meeting. Please note that the minutes indicate the meeting was held via WebEx. The March meeting was our first meeting via Zoom, and the minutes have been corrected to indicate that. So is there a motion to approve the minutes? Commissioner Alderks.
Motion to approve the minutes from last meeting.
Is there a second? Commissioner Dodd.
I second the motion to approve.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of the March 3rd meeting. Is there any discussion around those minutes? Seeing no indication of anyone being interested in commenting, all in favor of adopting the minutes? And we've got unanimous consent. Everyone raise their hand on that. So the meeting minutes for the March 3rd meeting are adopted as corrected for the Zoom versus WebEx.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
Commissioner Gustafson's image had frozen, and I didn't see if she had raised her hand. I just wanted to confirm.
Oh, I did see her, so. Yes, there's her hand.
Yes.
Thumbs up. So it's a vigorous approval.
Thank you.
All right. Is there any new business this evening?
No new business, Mr. Chair.
So seeing none, we'll get into the study session, the principal item on tonight's agenda. And I would just Senior Planner Lamb, are you taking the lead on this one?
Yep, taking the lead on my first item, so it's good to see you all again. I'll do my best to facilitate our conversation. I'm going to attempt to share my screen here. For our presentation, and you should be able to see my presentation.
Yes.
Yes.
Thumbs up. Awesome. Okay, so we are circling back around to some conversations that you had late last year when you were doing all the hard work of getting the Canyon Park sub-area plan and development regulations across the finish line. The bonus incentives related to additional FAR, you guys had discussed at several during public hearings and study sessions, and some ideas were put forth, but ultimately, as I understand, there wasn't enough time to sort of work through the complexities of those incentives and public benefits that some of you had mentioned that you'd like to see through some incentives in the Canyon Park sub area. So we're just, the point of tonight is to for staff to get some direction on which way you want to go with that, and to just explore some of the items that you've already thrown out there, and explore new ideas that you might have had since then. Hopefully your package was insightful with in helping to ground these ideas around incentives that were laid out in the Canyon Park plan. So currently the city has established 2 placeholders in the Canyon Park development regulations that you see over to the right. So there's 2 spots reserved, and these are for placeholders for the additional development regulations to incentivize the desired development patterns in Canyon Park. The first one is transfer of development rights. The idea being, if a development is coming up short in terms of the jobs or housing units that it's providing, that it can sell credits to another developer to be able to make up for that, for the mismatch, and that allows us to retain our activity units that we're supposed to direct into, especially the regional growth center in Canyon Park. This right now is being discussed among staff, and for right now, at least, it's really just related to essential public facilities. But we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Excuse me. The next one is what we'd like to hash out tonight is the bonus floor area ratios, and this is the bottom line is to be able for developers to achieve a greater density and intensity of buildings for something in exchange for something that the city deems as a public benefit. So on our next slide here, you'll recall from this table that's in the development regulations regarding minimum floor area ratios, maximum base FAR, building heights, et cetera, that the additional FAR on top of what's already prescribed in the table is eventually it leads to yielding more units and leasable space for developers. And again, you all have some ideas of the public benefits that you want, or we'll be discussing that further. But just to recall, so looking at the table, so there's the maximum base FARs. So we're talking about, establishing some ground rules and a list of public benefits that we want to achieve for developers to go above that maximum base FAR. And we just haven't set those limits yet because we haven't got that far. But that's what we're working to. Just to go over some common public benefits achieved through incentives just across regional jurisdictions and many other places, open space amenities and parks, civic spaces and public art, ecological environmental enhancement, excuse me, resource conservation and energy efficiency, transit or multimodal infrastructure, and contributions to other public infrastructure improvements are common things that the city could ask for in letting a developer exceed the thresholds of what's prescribed in that last table we've looked at. And we've got this figure to the right here that just sort of reminds us that, we should be trying to thread, the needle on achieving this balance between, okay, we've got a community that we're trying to establish through this new sub-area plan, but we don't want to disincentivize developers because they, their bottom line is that they want to turn a profit, and that's the private market, and they should be able to do that. And then of course the environment. There's some ecological assets in this sub area, and you all have expressed some incentives or public benefits related to the environment through providing this bonus FAR incentive. So we'll work through those ideas that we've heard so far from you in the past conversations that you had, was that you'd like to see more affordable units or deeper affordability on top of what is required currently by the development regulations. So there is a mandatory housing affordability element already in the development regulations. Affordable commercial space, we touched on that a little bit last time, and staff is be doing research on the back end to learn a little bit more about the structures of how that can work. Somebody mentioned retrofitting existing buildings, and so we'll discuss this later, and you all can provide clarification on where you'd like to see that go. Solar energy, green buildings, and green infrastructure were also mentioned. We also wanted to point out that it's very easy to sort of construe incentives and public benefits and kind of conflate them together. And so we really want to make sure that we stick to the bonus FAR incentive, because some ideas that were also thrown out there were parking reductions. We've already had parking reductions built into the development regulations as part of that mandatory affordable housing element. MFTE, that's one level that's a program that's going to be eventually implemented in the whole city. And so we'll just need to be aware of, if we're going to be layering this incentive on top of that and how that comes into play. And then transfer of development rights that we talked about earlier. So moving forward, here's just some policy language from the comp plan. Again, just to ground us in the policy that we already have for incentives. These are the more pertinent mentions of incentives in our Imagine Bothell comp plan. So the first one is under the natural environment element. So consider providing incentives to improve energy efficiency, use green building and site development methods to implement other greenhouse gas emission actions. The Shoreline Master Program protects shorelines and ecological functions through incentives to private property owners to encourage ecologically sound design. Housing and Human Services talked about this at great lengths before through some of your previous conversations. Ensure that affordable housing is achieved through public incentives, and specifically to make sure it remains affordable for the longest possible term. A couple others for transportation demand management under the transportation element. TDM measures can include incentives such as bus pass subsidies for residents. And then the last one here, economic development. Under the economic development element is identify tax incentives, grants, potential changes in state legislation or other mechanisms to encourage development and redevelopment.
Nathan?
Yes. Yep.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Mr. Chair, Claire Robson is in attendance. I'm going to bring her in.
Oh, good.
And I feel like I'm flying through this, so please stop me at any point if you all have any questions.
Can you go ahead and unshare your screen for a little bit, Nathan, so we can do introductions and maybe come back to this. And you can do a quick recap for the new commissioner.
Sure.
Hi there. I apologize for arriving late. E-schooling has got me delayed on my email, on checking my email.
Okay. And welcome to the commissioner. I'm Kevin Kiernan, the current chair of the commission.
Hi.
And Claire, I just turned my video on. Sorry. I'm
Hi.
Mike Otterman. I'm the Community Development Director, and just happy that you're able to join us this evening. I realized it was very last minute. Unfortunately, that's how the calendar worked out with the appointments and the next commission meeting, but very happy that you're here and welcome. So
Thank you.
maybe we could have the other commissioners introduce themselves, and then you could share a little bit about yourself, your background, and your interest in the commission.
Okay.
I'll go next. Hey, my name is Karsten. I'm the vice chair right now on the Planning Commission.
I will jump in. Hi, Claire. We've met before.
Yeah.
My walking route takes me right by Claire's house. Fun story. Good to see you. And I'm just starting like my second year. I've only been here a year now.
Okay.
Hi, Sarah Gustafson here. Congratulations,
Hi.
Commissioner Robson, Claire.
Thanks.
Nice to see you.
Nice seeing you too.
And I joined with Commissioner Dodd and Commissioner Aldrichs at the same time last year.
Great.
Hi, Claire. This is Jenny Aldrichs. I too have visited with you over your fence on my walk. And I'm just really glad that you're here. And I also joined the commission at the same time as Commissioner Gustafson and Dodd. So starting our second year together here.
Cool.
Welcome.
Thanks.
And hey, Claire, I'm Nathan. I'm new to the city as well. I'm about almost 3 months in, and yeah, it's very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Do you guys really refer to each other with commissioner and last name?
Yes, that is the protocol during the meetings.
Okay, cool.
I try my best to keep to Robert's rules too, but
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Director Cotterman does help me stay in the right lane.
Okay.
We try not to be overly formal, but just to maintain a certain level of decorum, just to help keep things moving along.
Great.
And just in case Nathan, I don't remember if I heard Nathan mention, he's the senior planner with the city. And he's the manager on the project that we're talking about this evening.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
And we are televised.
Okay.
Should I start up? Why don't I start from the beginning, and I'll just quickly go through the slides, And
I was going to suggest if with the chair's permission, maybe Commissioner Robson could do a little introduction of herself. For maybe everybody knows each other, but I think it'd be beneficial for any
I
of
would
the
appreciate that.
listening audience, as well as those of us who haven't met you over your fence. So,
Well, thank you very much. I'm excited to be here. I guess I maybe I should start by saying I live on the Sammamish River Trail, and that's how people know me over my fence. I'm excited to be a part of this commission. I'm a former teacher, and I know how I have a really strong sense of how structures of homes and where businesses are and where libraries are and parks are can really create a feel for a community, and that's always been something really close to my heart. And so I'm interested into digging deeper into that so that we can keep Bothell, excuse me, I'm so sorry. Bothell very diverse and equitable for all people. I also have a very, very loud 9-year-old and a 7-year-old who momentarily distracted me there, but I'll get back in focus there. Yeah, so that's about me.
Nice to meet you.
Yes. We're very used to children and pets and other unexpected interruptions. So no.
They don't follow protocol, unfortunately.
We're in the Zoom world here.
Yeah.
I'll have to look for you. I walk the Sammamish River Trail with my golden retriever and my wife almost daily. So
You probably know my home. I'm at the North Creek Trail, Sammamish River Trail intersection there. I have a little picket fence. I consider myself something of an ambassador.
okay. We'll look.
Excellent. Well, very glad you could join us. And thank you. Welcome to the commission.
Thanks.
So you're actually joining at a very good time, because the item that Nathan is presenting this evening is picking up on some work that was done by the commission last year, excuse me, on the Canyon Park sub-area plan. So there were some items that we weren't able to include that we're now coming back, and we're working on implementation of those. So tonight is the reintroduction to that particular topic. And Mr. Chair, Nathan suggested maybe he should start at the beginning. It's not a lengthy presentation, so if with the indulgence of the chair and the other commissioners, would that be okay?
Yes, let's do that. We're not that far into it, so let's rewind and start over.
Okay.
alrighty. Yeah, and like I said,
For everything you said before, Nathan?
oh yeah, word for word. But yeah, just please stop me if any questions pop up. So I'm gonna reshare here. Let's see. Let's get that out of the way. All right, are we live?
You're good.
Okay. So starting from the top, late last year, the commissioners and staff, along with some consultants, had got the Canyon Park sub-area plan adopted, along with some development regulations. And there were a couple of items that they didn't really get to because there was just simply not enough time to work through the different levels of each of these items and taking the time that's required to work through these. So what we're talking about tonight is bonus floor area ratio incentive. And there's currently a placeholder in it in the development regulations that have currently been adopted for the Canyon Park sub-area plan. We're talking a little bit about transfer of development rights and how they could or couldn't be interrelated. So we were just getting to that more pertinent part of the discussion. There in the development regulations, we were just going over again the placeholder that would where we need to revisit to allow developers to exceed some thresholds that have currently been set that would essentially allow them to build bigger buildings and get more housing units and non-residential commercial space to lease out to tenants. And where we're trying to get to is we're providing that bigger building as an incentive for developers, but what public benefit can be provided in exchange for allowing them to do that. So we're just sort of working through some ideas that have already been put on the table by your fellow commissioners. We looked at these common public benefits that have been achieved through other incentive programs. Some common benefits are open space and amenities and parks, civic spaces and public art, environmental and ecological enhancement, resource conservation and energy efficiency, transit and multimodal infrastructure. And developers can also provide a contribution in some form or another that helps the city with public infrastructure improvements. This figure on the right is just to kind of help guide the framework that, to take when we're, for our discussion later, that we, sort of have this responsibility to balance, the bottom line, the 3 P's: bottom line, people, planet, and profit. So, we're talking about providing an incentive for developers, and we don't want to disincentivize them in any way, because we want to see these certain development outcomes in Canyon Park. But we also have a community we're trying to establish and sort of a placemaking framework that we're working through with Canyon Park, that the sub area and this regional growth center is kind of supposed to be different from other places in Bothell, and then also this responsibility of to the environment. And there's been some ideas put on the table by other commissioners of how to get public benefits regarding the environment. Sorry, my voice is getting a little hoarse here. I'll take a sip of water. At some of their past discussions, some of the benefits that they put on the table through incentives were more affordable units on top of what's already mandatory through the development regulations in Canyon Park, or deeper affordability, affordable commercial space, retrofitting existing buildings, solar energy, green buildings, and green infrastructure. Some of these are human service public benefits, and some of them are environmental. So we'll have to make sure we distinguish between those different kinds of public benefits that the commission would like to learn more about or explore later. And other incentives that had been mentioned that we need to just give careful thought to, that don't preclude using this bonus FAR incentive, are parking reductions, which have already been built into the development regulations as a means to provide mandatory affordable housing. MFTE, the commission has talked about that with representatives from Arch and with staff several times in these past few months. And then transfer of development rights that we touched on earlier. We went through some language in our comprehensive plan because it's best practice to stay grounded in what policy you already have adopted as you're we're setting up new frameworks and structures. And this is policy language that mentions incentives in some capacity. So we went through a couple elements, a couple excerpts from elements in our comprehensive plan. won't go over all of those again. And sort of getting to the crux of the discussion tonight, I think, is as we move forward, keeping in the back of our minds this sort of cost benefit analysis. You know, if whatever incentive we're providing, it ought to not be a burden to implement administratively. It shouldn't be too complicated or onerous for developers. And we also need to think about, are there underlying costs to the city? So, you know, if we allow a developer to build bigger buildings, does that mean there's more cost to the city for infrastructure maintenance? Is there going to be more traffic that the city has to deal with later on down the road? And again, these overlapping policies that staff is currently researching and working on, aside from this bonus FAR incentive, parking reductions, MFD, and transfer of development rights. So here's the direction staff is looking for. We'd like the commission to choose and prioritize which public benefits, maybe they're ones that you've already mentioned, to include for further research in developing the bonus FAR incentive program. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'll try to field any questions that you have. And I can always pull that presentation back up too if anybody would like to look at it.
So commissioners, anyone have a question or comment for Senior Planner Lam? Commissioner Alders.
Thank you for that presentation, and I really do appreciate the kind of introductory review. It especially since when I joined the commission, I didn't necessarily feel like I got that. So thank you, Claire, for being here and providing that opportunity for us today. One question I have for you now. Okay, I'm sorry. Decorum. Are you? What would your title be, Nathan? So I don't just call you like Mike's director. Who are you?
Nathan is fine with me. But
okay.
Matter of decorum, I guess. Senior Planner Lam is fine.
All right. I like that. Okay. Senior Planner Lam. Thank you. So the visuals especially were helpful to me. And it called to mind something called the strategic triangle. I feel like you did a very good job of articulating what that is. And the visual sort of evoked it for me as well, which is the idea that something like you want the overlap between what is implementable, what is supportable, and what is correct. And so that is a helpful guide for me as we're kind of thinking through these possibilities here. But you also use that same kind of Venn diagram with the people, profits, and what was it? What was the fourth P for environment? You know what I mean. The third one, sorry. But planet. You know what I'm talking. Say that again.
Planet.
Planet. Thank you. P for planet. And so I'd really like to, and I'm a visual thinker. I don't know if anybody else here is, but if we could actually sort out the ideas that we've already, or the ideas that are already on the table that we've discussed before, or that come up in our conversation tonight, if we could sort them in according to like, is this a people one, or is this the planet one, or is this the profit one? And we might be able to find one that actually kind of intersects with all three. And that could help us guide our decision making and prioritize those. So, like I said, visuals are really evocative for me and really helpful. So that's kind of where I went with that. And if that's a possibility, could you maybe for the next time we have this conversation, could you include a model that kind of diagrams that out for us so we can see where the overlap is? So that's my question, and thank you very much for your presentation.
Thanks. Yeah, no, that's a great idea. I'm visual too, so to be able to see which ones you've already mentioned and how they overlap in diagram form would be, I think that'd be very helpful. So I can definitely take a stab at putting that together to help facilitate our next discussion.
Thank you very much.
Commissioner Curd and then Commissioner Dodd.
Thanks for the presentation. I'm wondering if you could give a brief overview of the existing affordability requirements that have been built into the Canyon Park sub-area plan.
Sure. Let me, I need to reference that code that I had on the screen. The first part of that language for under affordable housing is that all developments creating new dwelling units or commercial space within these certain particular zones, RMU-H, RMU-M, OR-H, and OR-M zones shall provide for affordable housing. It mentions housing and linkage fees required by this section. Minimum requirements: at least 10% of the number of dwelling units created within a development shall be affordable at the following levels defined in BMC 12.07. Owner-occupied housing shall be affordable to moderate income households. Renter-occupied housing shall be affordable to moderate income households. All developments creating rentable, climate-controlled, non-residential floor areas shall pay the city a commercial development affordable housing linkage fee as established by city council. So that's all of the language under 12.48.150 affordable housing.
Commissioner Dodd and then Commissioner Robeson.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Nathan, for that presentation. It was really helpful. Just as my first take, and I'm definitely open to being swayed by anybody who makes a good speech after me, would be I'd like deeper affordability, since we know that units that are affordable at other levels, my terminology is not coming to me, but basically for lower income households like that's hard to get without like a public-private partnership. So I feel like that's something that might be able to bridge that gap. That I think that's what Arch has kind of told us before. So I like deeper affordability. And then I also like, I want to say open space, but I'm going to go back to something I've said before, which is not just like an open plaza, but like an interesting open space. Like stick a playground in the middle of it. It doesn't have to be like a full-on park. Like I feel like what our, particularly the Snohomish County part of Bothell, but also just this area is missing is just small areas for fun. Like we don't need a giant Cedar Grove Park, or it's not a City Bothell Park, but like Miners Corner is huge. Just give us a small place to have some fun as families are out and about in this area. So that's kind of those things speak to me as ways to make this like placemaking, you know, for the people who live there and the people who visit there. So that's kind of my first take. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Robeson.
Hi, thank you, Robson. I just wanted to ask for my own self-knowledge, is Nathan referencing the Imagine Bothell document? Is that where he's getting the numbers and everything? Okay, and is that something I print out myself, or is that just something we generally reference online? How does that work? Thanks.
So the comprehensive plan, the Imagine Bothell comprehensive plan is online, and generally that's how we access it. And some of the numbers that Nathan was referencing are out of the Bothell Municipal Code. So for the Canyon Park section, it's Title 12, Chapter 48.
Correct.
Did I get that right?
Yep.
Of the municipal code, or is that of the big, okay, of the
Municipal Code, yes,
Thank
which is also online.
Okay.
Unfortunately, the Canyon Park portion hasn't been codified yet, but it should be by the end of this month. But there is a link. If you go to the code, there is a link to the ordinance that adopted the code, so you can access it that way. It's not the most user-friendly that way, but We're almost there.
I'm so sorry. One more time, can you tell me what municipal code that is? I missed it as I was typing it out.
That's okay. It's the Bothell Municipal Code.
Okay.
And it's Title 12.
Title 12. Thank you. That's it. Yeah.
That's the entire zoning code. And then Canyon Park sub-area regulations specifically are in Chapter 48. And if you have, I know that you've got a lot to pick up on here, so don't hesitate to ask us questions either during the meeting or after the meeting. Email me or Nathan. We're happy to help you out and get you some additional information, whatever you need to help you start to get your head wrapped around all this. It's a lot to absorb.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah, I didn't know if you had a chance to see the commission package for this meeting, but there is some language from the Canyon Park plan that was pulled out of there that's accessible online. That part at least is accessible online. So, yep.
We will be revisiting this again too. This is an initial study session for feedback.
Yes, I expect this will be coming back to the commission a few times. It's going to take us a while to sort some of this out.
Thank you. Commissioner Gustafson.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Senior Planner Lamb, for the very helpful reorientation to the bonuses and the system that could be put in place. In the past, I have thought that we should focus all the incentives on affordable housing, as Commissioner Dodd said, and make that as deep as possible. If we were going to layer affordable housing FAR incentives on top of the existing program, how would that work, and what would be the initial pros and cons of that?
Yeah, so we're only starting to understand that. We've been working in the background on the MFTE program with Mike Stanger through Arch, and we're sort of working on that analysis right now on what that looks like when you have a mandatory requirement already and then layering additional units and deeper affordability, and how that pencils out for the developer, because again, it's gotta pencil out for them as well as providing a benefit to the city and the residents who would be living in those affordable units. Well, as we move forward, I'll have to bring more information to you as we learn it, because I'm not sure that I have a good answer for you right now, but it is sort of like a inverse relationship. If you're asking for deeper affordability, and Mike, please jump in if I'm misconstruing something or not articulating it properly. But if you ask for deeper affordability, that means less units and vice versa. Yeah, we've got our work cut out for us for how that works, and I don't have a full answer for you tonight.
Nathan's response. Excuse me, I don't know what's going on with my voice tonight either. Nathan's response was spot on in terms of what we know so far, and I can just give you a couple of examples of what Nathan was talking about in terms of the inverse relationship. That's true when we're talking about a standalone program like the MFTE program, multifamily tax exemption program. Sorry, Commissioner Robson, we tend to use a lot of acronyms, so we'll try to do better about that. So if you just have that one program and you go for a deeper affordability, then you would have fewer units that you would get as a result of that. That's what Nathan was describing. When we layer different programs, so if we have the mandatory program, and if we do affordable housing, additional affordable housing through this bonus incentive program, then it could work a couple of ways. We could layer it, in which case you could have deeper affordability, but because we're adding a program to it, you wouldn't necessarily have fewer units than you do through the mandatory program. just throwing some numbers out there. So let's say you're going to have 10 units affordable at 80% of area median income under the mandatory program. If you put MFTE or the bonus incentive program on top of that, then you might get the same 10 units, but they would be affordable at 60% of area median income. So you don't necessarily lose units when you're layering like that. On the other hand, and this is one of the things that we'll be discussing with the commission as we get further down the road with this project, there may be some times when we don't want to layer and we'll treat them as separate. So you would get the 10 units at 80% of area median income. And in addition to that, you would get maybe 5 more units at 60% of area median income based on the bonus incentive program. So the two wouldn't necessarily mix. Does that help? Does that make sense? And it could work either way. And there will be some pros and cons to that. And that's what Nathan was referring to, is we need some additional analysis to really tell us what those trade-offs are. So the first step is really for us to figure out what are the incentives or what are the public benefits that we want to get out of those incentives, so that we can focus on those, get more information about those, and then start to understand what the value of that trade-off is. You know, what's the developer getting and what's the public getting as a benefit for that.
Thank you. Commissioner Todd.
This is a little out there, so bear with me. The backstory is I just got a bike, and it's the kind that you can like put your kid on the back of and like go for a bike ride. So living above Canyon Park, I actually took my son down there Monday, and we rode around on sort of the trails that are around the business park. And I noticed they're in various states of good upkeep, and some are not in what I would call good upkeep. There's a lot of like tree roots coming up. There's some parts that get a little roller coastery as you're riding. There's some parts that are just gravel and not paved, fallen fences and such. Still was a fun ride. We didn't fall off the bike. But my question around that is, I wonder if there's a way when offering sort of public space, if we get to the point of offering that for this, if there could be a way to say, okay, fix up, you know, this much trail, you know, repave it or pave an area that's not, like if there's a way to keep it within, you know, the sub area, but I don't know who would actually own those trails in the end. So it's something that would be kind of cool because it would fix it up and make it more walkable. You know, like I always think of my dad who's in a wheelchair, like, could I roll him over this trail? And with a lot of those trails, the answer is definitely not. Mm-hmm. And if I tried, he would be very annoyed with me. So I think that would be a really cool way that we could offer this. I don't know how it would work, how you would write that in code, which is also not my job, but it's something that I've been thinking about, like getting improvements, you know, that aren't necessarily like right on that property. So that's all. Thank you.
And if I recall, Nathan, I think that was one of the items you had listed on a slide was contributions to other public infrastructure.
Right. And I think for staff, the homework that we would have to do is, how do you sort of quantify or have like an exchange rate for, you know, okay, how much trail are you going, or part of the creek are you going to enhance, and how does that translate into the additional FAR that you get, like 0.5 or 0.75? And so we just need to be able to think about that a little bit more. And then you kind of touched on another point in that presentation, which is, you know, who maintains it and who owns it. And if it's the city, you know, we get the benefit up front, but then we might have to continue to pay for it on the back end. So that's another thing to consider. So jotting that down in my notes and as something that we can research and look further into.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, comment, but the roads within the Canyon Park Business Park are privately owned and maintained. Yeah. So I would guess that
within the business park itself, yes.
yeah, within the business park. And then there's been a lot of discussion and some controversy about the city assuming ownership and responsibility for maintenance there. So that's not a simple one. I would think that the trail, that stretch of trail is probably in the same category. You know, if that's city or private.
I was just having the same question in my mind, Mr. Chair. I think we're going to have to research that a little bit because I believe some of those trails are still private, and I think the maintenance is the responsibility of the business park. But I've got to confirm that. I'm not 100% sure that I've got that correct. I think there are some public trails as well.
And there is an overall city plan to have the North Creek Trail be a more robust trail from Sammamish River up north to the city limit. Correct?
Yes, that's correct. In fact, that's one of our legislative priorities is to obtain some additional funding to complete that part of the trail in the city.
Commissioner questions, comments? Commissioner Hurd.
Thanks. Just to kind of follow up with what the previous discussion was about public infrastructure improvements, I think that the easiest way to get at that would be through a fee in lieu program. And previously we've discussed at length about how fee in lieu doesn't really provide for maintenance. And so my initial thought is providing additional FAR or building capacity, which is a permanent thing for what may be a temporary sum of money, could be problematic on the part of developer ownership of keeping track of, trail improvements and such. I am interested in some of the environmental incentive or bonuses that might be gained. Specifically, I think that maybe solar energy is a little bit of a stretch for providing additional FAR capacity, but maybe green buildings or reductions in energy consumption, such as like passive house design elements, which are really low energy usage buildings. That's something that would be a permanent feature of the structures. It would provide a permanent environmental benefit as part of the structure's lifetime, and it would exist in a permanent increase in FAR. So to me, the permanency of the benefit in concert with the permanency of the given from the city, that the lever that we've pushed permanently for the FAR makes quite a nice fit there. Although I still think that layering affordability should be our number one goal here, just because 80% AMI is still high for some of us. So I think that getting lower and broader affordability should still be a priority. Thanks.
Any other commissioner comments? Commissioner Gustafson and Commissioner Alderks.
Hi, Sarah Gustafson here. Yes, I think right now I'm leaning towards the deeper affordability. However, I do want to touch back on the great presentation we heard last time from the students. And it sounded like there might be some case study information from Prosper Portland about how their affordable commercial space programs have been working out. I even tried Googling them, but I couldn't find any results, only the setup. So definitely that would be great to take into account on the affordable commercial space before we make any final decisions. Thank you.
And understand we're not asking you to pick just one or two. Obviously we can't analyze everything, but if you've got your top, say 3 to 5, we can look at those. I just made more work for Nathan, but he'll get me back later.
Commissioner Alders.
Thank you. Jenny Alders here. I really appreciate my fellow commissioners for all their good thoughts and insights into this. One thing that came to mind based on what I'm hearing is that we are talking about different types of developments, and it's not like we have one kind here. So that might factor into what FAR benefits would like. I know that in some areas we're going to have mixed use, so it could be retail or residential. But then there's also some areas where we might just have a retail or we might just have a residential, and the public benefits might be different given the different types of development. And so thinking about how we can pair them together. For example, Carson's idea of having passive house, it's an excellent concept, but that makes sense for housing, correct? And it doesn't apply to buildings or to commercial buildings as well. And parks, to Commissioner Dodd's idea, the little pocket parks, that might be great in either. And so I'm just kind of thinking, what are the natural pairings that we could make between the different types of developments that we're talking about? And does that give us any guidance on what to prioritize? And I don't know if more questions like that is welcome, because it just means more work. But I'm hoping that maybe something kind of naturally springs to mind for people too, that we can start thinking along those lines.
No, I think that's sorry. If I could respond to that real quick. I think that lends itself well to your last idea of that matrix and separating them out. So it might be a little more complicated matrix, but I can try to add it in there. So, yep.
Mr. Todd, did I see you raise your hand?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I was going to add, Commissioner Gustafson reminded me that in addition to put a slide on it as my motto, I also am really into affordable commercial space. And I would love to see that represented in the sub area too, and in these incentives. Since you said 3 to 5, Director, I'll bump it up to 3. But I'll leave it there. Just spare Nathan. So, but yeah, I think that's really important. I would love to see something similar to what was announced in the council meeting last night, the sheds for startup retail space, retail incubators. I would love to see that in the sub area too. I think once right now might be kind of interesting and not a great time, but like in a while when we have more development, more people living there, more, less pandemic, more people, I think it would be really a great place for it. So thank you.
I just note for the commission's information, there are some users out there, some businesses, not proper names, what am I thinking of? Tenants out there, thank you, tenants, that was the word I was looking for, that are creating some of those spaces, those public spaces, primarily for their employees. Along, I think it was 29th, we took Nathan on a tour a few weeks ago, and Seattle Genetics, for example, has some spaces between their buildings that they've added tables and umbrellas, and I understand they have food trucks that come during lunch hour. So they're starting to fill that need that we've been talking about throughout this process for creating those active public spaces among the office buildings. So I think that fits with what Commissioner Dodd was describing in terms of the pop-up retail.
And I would second that. Walking up North Creek Trail, you do see a number of those businesses do have spaces behind. Off the top of my head, I could think of a horseshoe pit and a volleyball court. And in COVID times, I've seen families actually doing tailgate meetings back there where they can spread out and be outside there. So, that is happening.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to kind of run through the 6 items that Nathan talked about. And I'd like to put my voice behind Commissioner Aldrich.
Thank you, Chair. Jenny Aldrich here. I wanted to add that was another thing that I had meant to say earlier, to Commissioner Dodd's point about City Council mentions in last night. Definitely, I'm always a fan of affordable commercial space as well. But there was also a conversation about the creation of a community garden with the Snohomish, is it the Health District? Environmental District? Sorry.
Mhm.
But there is interest in forming and placing a community garden somewhere in Bothell, and Kenyon Park seems to be a perfectly suitable place filled with possibility for that. And so to think about that, and or another thing that came to mind is our rain gardens, that there could be, obviously the landscaping in the code requires and then makes it possible for developers to install a rain garden just as part of their landscaping. But if they wanted to do something a little more than that and create it like a larger scale rain garden that might fit in the space, I would throw that out there as well. And now, Chair, I would welcome your thoughts, but thank you for letting me sneak that in there.
Sure. So again, returning to Nathan's list of 6 items, I'd like to kind of throw my voice behind the several others about deeper affordability. And I think if we want Bothell to be a diverse community, we need to have that more affordable housing. Also, the affordable commercial space. The Kenyon Park sub-area, one of the objectives is to generate jobs. And one way to have jobs for the future is to have those affordable commercial spaces which can incubate new businesses and have those jobs. Your 3rd item was retrofit. I think that was an issue that former Commissioner Vliet felt very strongly about, but he generally talked about it in terms of housing and not cheap. The most affordable housing is existing housing. I think he always said, and why tear it down and build new? I'm not sure that applies as much here, so I might move that down. If we're dropping some off the list, with all due respect to my old friend David, I think that might be one we'd let go in this particular area. More generally, it certainly has applicability. Your other 3, solar energy, green building, and green infrastructure, I see there being a real nexus there. And I would move under the general umbrella of green building and let the developer figure out what element. Solar can certainly get you a green building aspect, but let them figure out, let the market figure out how to make that work. When you cost out a project over its lifespan, green building is very cost effective, but it often has some higher upfront costs. So if the city can, through some incentives, address that burden of the upfront cost and have the long-term benefit, I think that would be a good thing. So those are my thoughts on your list, Nathan.
Okay.
Commissioner, comments? So I believe that was the objective of this presentation, to get our thoughts and feedback on your list there and the ideas. Did you get enough of new work to keep you busy for a little while?
Definitely. I think we have some consensus, on like you just covered, what can drop off and what can be prioritized. I think we'll try to run with this matrix idea. I would say it would be helpful to narrow the list down because, as Mike said earlier, we can't research everything, and given the amount of time, that we have to discuss at the meetings, we could either research items more in depth or cast a wider net and get some basic facts and about each of those items. So if I just encourage, you all to, if you want to discuss a little bit more, to narrow them down. Otherwise, I can take what we have tonight and run with it and present you with something in April. I didn't know if you wanted to weigh in, Mike, if that sounds reasonable.
Yeah, I think I think the chair sort of summed it up and consolidated a couple of things. So we might be able to, I think we've maybe narrowed it down that way. So we can look at the sort of the green incentive package as being some possibilities in there. And I think doing the Venn diagram that Commissioner Aldrich's talked about may help to clarify some of those things in terms of the overall benefit as well. So we were kind of looking for some prioritization, and I think I heard that this evening. It sounded like the deeper affordability was number one. Additional affordable units was kind of a close second to that. Affordable commercial space, I'd say a close third. So certainly those would be the top three from what I heard. And then I think the other one is really probably more of the green building types of items. Is that, I'm seeing nods from most everybody. Okay.
We have a consensus.
And this is by no means, the final time that we're talking about this. I think this gives us some good direction to go on at this point, and we may have some other ideas as Nathan does some more research on this. We may come back with some other ideas on things that are similar or related, or that we think might be something the commission would be interested in. So, and if you have any other thoughts, as we talk some more about this, at a future meeting, let us know about those too.
All right, thank you.
Does that work, Nathan?
Yep, absolutely. And just one last thought, I wanted to appreciate Commissioner Curd because he brought up something that we really hadn't given much thought to, the idea of the temporary benefits versus sort of what's in perpetuity. So we'll try to massage that into that matrix as we move forward. So thanks.
Yep, that was good. Very good point. Lots of good discussion, very helpful direction tonight. Thank you.
Great. So I think that wraps this item. So we're through with our study session. Our next item is unfinished business with our new title from what we learned at our little session on Robert's Rules. So Director Cotterman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I thought we would just go ahead and update our agenda to reflect the new language that we're using now for that. So I included in the packet, I think the commission had requested at the last meeting that you get a copy of the docket that was approved by the city council. For the benefit of Commissioner Robson, every year we do what we call our planning docket. So these are either requests, private requests that have come in for code or plan amendments, as well as other things other potential amendments or tasks that have been identified by the staff or the commission or the council over the course of the year, or things that have come up in the work that we've been doing, such as tonight's item. That's a continuation of the work that was done on Canyon Park. So we put that list together. The staff prioritizes that. We get feedback from the commission, and then we present that to the city council. And then they tell us whether they agree with the priorities. And this is basically our work program for the year for staff as well as for the planning commission. So the council approved that back in February, and we've included the approved version in your packet this evening. And I know we've gone over it a couple of times with the commission, so I didn't really have any presentation on that, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. And I think Chair Kieran was at the meeting and had a good summary of the council's discussion.
And I was just going to comment, I haven't memorized them all, but the first five are the state mandates. Below that are the council priorities. And I would point out to the commissioners that the highest council priority is affordable housing. And there are a number of elements in there. Missing middle is in there. I think maybe 5 sub-elements in there. But clearly, affordable housing, which we have discussed a lot in the commission, is also a priority for the council. So I felt good that that was reflected in there.
And that was a priority of the commission as well, as you mentioned, Mr. Chair. And we did share that with the council as well when we presented it to them. And this has been consistent with the council as well. Affordable housing has been for the 3 years that I've been with the city now, 3 years this month, as a matter of fact, that has been a priority for the council and continues to be.
So moving on then, Commissioner Curd.
Thanks, Chair. I have a quick question about the docket, and that's that I see shorelines elements have been maybe changed or added. Will the Shorelines Board be doing a joint session with Planning Commission in the next year or so, or what is your vision for that?
That's a great question, and the short answer is I don't know. We'll need to look at what they're amending, and I don't recall off the top of my head. I could take a look at that. I know some of it is housekeeping, which we're doing as part of the FEMA updates that we had to do last year to our frequently flooded areas, or flood hazard areas as they're called now. So I don't know that those come under the purview of the Planning Commission. But if they do, if there are some code amendments that they're proposing that also fall under the purview of the Planning Commission, then we would have a joint meeting. And we don't anticipate reconvening the Shorelines Board until later this year. Given our work program, we think it's probably going to come later in the year, and it will most likely roll into next year as well. Does that answer your question, Commissioner Curd?
Yes, thank you.
And I urge the commissioners to take a look at that docket, get an idea of what's ahead of us. So moving along, reports from staff.
So speaking of the docket, one item just to call to your attention, in the last packet, I believe it was the March 3rd packet, we also included an outline of a work program for the Planning Commission, and we included items that we would anticipate bringing to you each month. We didn't do it meeting by meeting, but just generally what we expected to bring to you during the next month. So for April, what we have on the work program for you is a continuation of the general downtown corridor, the code amendments that Senior Planner Dave Boyd brought to you last meeting. So we'll continue that discussion at your April 7th meeting. Nathan will be back at the second meeting in April with continued discussion on the bonus incentive program. We also are intending to wrap the sort of an orientation program into the next meeting for the commission. Normally we do just a separate orientation for just the new commissioners. We'll do it for the planning commissioners as well as for the Landmark Preservation Board members. And what we thought we might do, and I think we did this last time, was we set aside the first part of the meeting and invite them into the meeting and do the orientation for everyone, take maybe 30 minutes or so, answer any questions. It's really just a quick overview, Commissioner Robson, and there are other training opportunities that I will bring to the board and the commission. In fact, that reminds me there's some short courses coming up that I need to send you those dates if you're interested. And then we would excuse the Landmark Board members and continue on with the rest of the agenda for the Planning Commission. The other item we have for April is an update to the Commission on the countywide planning policies and the draft growth targets. So we have almost real numbers now from King County. We don't have anything yet from Snohomish County in terms of draft targets. They're looking at some capacity numbers for us. They're a little bit further behind in the schedule than King County. So we wanted to update you on that. We're also going to be going to the council and getting some feedback and direction from them because these growth targets for King County will be going to the King County Council and the Growth Management Planning Council for approval sometime this summer. So we want to make sure that we've got some good feedback and that the council is comfortable with the additional growth that's being assigned to Bothell. It's being assigned to all the cities in King County, but a portion of it obviously coming to Bothell. So we've been working with the county on determining just what capacity we have and how we might accommodate that growth. And it's a little tight, frankly. So we may be looking at some additional changes as part of the comprehensive plan update. And once we get the Snohomish County numbers, we'll have a better idea of where I think we have some additional capacity, and we might try to reassign some of those growth numbers from King County to Snohomish County. As I've mentioned before, that's not exactly how it's supposed to work, but there are a few cities like Bothell that are in 2 counties. And I think I've got a good argument for us being able to do that. And no one has told me absolutely no yet. So I'm going to continue to pursue that until somebody tells me to stop. So that's what's coming to you in April. And then, as we mentioned earlier, you have 2 new planning commissioners, Commissioner Robson. And again, welcome. Very happy to have you on board. It's a very good group. I think you're going to enjoy being a part of this group. And then the other new commissioner is Carrie Westerbeck, whom I think most of you know. Carrie has been the chair of the Landmark Preservation Board for the last few years. And his term starts April 1st, so he'll be at the April 7th meeting. And he's very familiar with most of the issues that the commission has been working with, so I think he'll probably jump right in. Knowing Carrie, I'm sure that he has a few opinions about some of the things that we'll be talking about. Oh, we have a new visitor. Okay. See, I told you, Commissioner Robson, we have all sorts of entertaining things happening during the meeting.
He's actually been here for about the last half hour. He
That's
just was like under the yeah. Now he's on my keyboard.
Grown a bit too.
And I'm sure there's some other things, but those were the main ones that I wanted to share with the commission this evening. Nathan, is there anything else you can think of that I've forgotten to mention? Oh, we did have, I'm sorry, there was one other thing. Yes, last night, Nathan presented and the council adopted the 2019 Comprehensive Plan and Code Amendments. You may recall the commission recommended these to the city council back in November of 2019, and it went to the council for adoption. And it was held up by an appeal of the SEPA determination by the Canyon Park Business Center Owners Association. And the council couldn't act on it until that appeal was resolved. The appeal was withdrawn back in February, just before they filed the appeal on the Canyon Park Subarea Plan and Development Regulations. But that allowed us to go forward with the adoption of those 2019 amendments. And that does not interfere at all with us doing the 2021 amendments that you'll be getting later on this year. So we are allowed to do that. And then also last night, the council extended, this was one of the COVID interim ordinances that the council passed a year ago at the beginning of the pandemic, and it suspends the expiration of permits and applications. So applicants don't have to worry about, missing out on their permits. If their project is stalled, then it doesn't go away. They can continue to work on that and pick it up. So that was extended for another 6 months. And I think those were all the highlights this evening, Mr. Chair. Happy to answer any questions. Or if there's anything else that you think I missed, I can discuss some more. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Director Cotterman. Any questions or comments from commissioners? Seeing the next item. Oh, Commissioner Curd.
You should know that I always have a question. Thanks for the presentation, Director. My quick question for you is in regard to permitting in community development right now, are we seeing sort of similar development applications to last or to pre-pandemic levels? Or are we still below or about average? What's the current development status of Bothell right now?
Thank you for that question. We're actually talking about doing an update to council at some point, and I'll make sure that we bring that to the Planning Commission as well. But very quickly, I can tell you that we're very busy on the permit side. The amount of development that we're seeing, There was a slight lull during the first part of the pandemic, but we've seen a steady increase, and we're at or above levels that we experienced last year before the pandemic. So 2018 was a record year for us in terms of the amount of activity that we had, land use applications, building permit applications, permits issued, number of certificates of occupancy and dwelling units that were finalized. So we're seeing not quite to that level, but 17 and 19 were both pretty close to 2018, and we're seeing more of the 17 and 19 levels of activity. And we have major projects that are already in the works. One in North Creek, the Avalon Bay project on the old Seattle Times site. I don't know if they've completed demolition, but they were in the process of demolishing that large structure. And they're proposing close to 1,000 dwelling units and a little bit of commercial space on that site. There's also the townhouse project that's been approved just on the north part of that site. And there's another project, townhouse project was originally proposed on the south part of that. That has gone away, but there's another, I believe, interim use that's looking at that site. We also have the Sama project, which is on Lot A, the old bike and ski parcel in downtown on 522. That's 76 units, I believe. That's being built by Imagine Housing. We're expecting that application in shortly. We have several plats that are still that have been approved, and we anticipate we'll start getting building permit applications for those, including several single family, larger plats, as well as some short plats and multifamily development. There's a couple of townhouse projects. Actually, I think there are about 3 or 4 townhouse projects just in the downtown. And Block D, of course, we are anticipating that going forward sometime this year. And they're looking at over 300 apartments in that building as well. And I know there are some others. Well, the micro housing that you've heard about, that's a project that would come after the code amendments, obviously. But we'd anticipate that within the next couple of years. And then Husky Village redevelopment is also anticipated to come in very soon. So
thank you.
Lots going on. And that's just a few of them that I can recall off the top of my head.
Alders.
Yeah, thank you both for the question and for the answer on that. A follow-up question from me is, are any condos, any takers on testing out the waters for condos in permits?
Not that I recall. I can't say definitely no, but none come to mind immediately. And I should mention, since you asked the question, I'll see if I can pull this up. We do have a page online that you can go to, and it will tell you about the projects that we have active. Let's see if I can, if you'll bear with me for one moment.
Peter, can you actually take my plate and put it in there? I'll be able to join you soon. Oh, sorry, I was not muted.
And unfortunately, my computer is moving at a glacial pace this evening. We have an interactive map on our website that shows private development projects. I'm going to share my screen at this point so you can see where this is. Thank you for your indulgence on this. So if you go to the city website, and then on the left-hand side, you'll see maps, and then go to interactive maps, and then private development projects. And if and when it loads, unfortunately, I'm in a location that does not have the best internet connection. So there we go. Everyone see that? So this shows all projects, those that are in review, whether they've had preliminary approval or under construction. So you can zoom in on this. Yeah, and you can hover over a dot, click on it, and it will bring up information. So this is a subdivision, a 22-lot single-family plat, and it is currently in review, so has not yet been approved. And then if you wanted more information, you write down the case number and you can go to mybuildingpermit.com and call up more information on that. But if I scroll back, you can see we have a lot of dots in the city right now. So thank you for your indulgence on that. I like showing off we've been working on getting that updated and making it a little more interactive.
Commissioner Todd.
I was just going to say, I really like that site. I've used it a bunch to look at projects, and I'm like, ooh, what's happening there? So it's great work.
Great. I'm glad to hear people are using it. That's excellent.
All right, I think that wraps reports from staff, reports from members. Oops, Commissioner Gustafson, do you have a? Oh, okay, members, reports from members. Commissioner Hurd?
I'll refrain from speaking now.
Commissioner Gustafson?
Thank you, Chair. I think this is the appropriate time. I wanted to mention that the City of Bothell has released a diversity, equity, and inclusion survey. I'm guessing most people on this call have already seen it. But just in case, for our vast audience, I think it is surveymonkey.com/r/Bothell-DEI. There might be a better link. If anybody has that and could share it, that would be great. But the city is trying to kick off a diversity, equity, and inclusion, more integrated program with hiring a person to work with the city, focusing on this. And I think they're trying to lay the groundwork for that with this survey. So, thank you.
Yes. Thank you for mentioning that. I should have brought that up. And I believe, if I remember correctly, I think it just went out this week and we have over 300 responses so far. So getting a good response. I hope that continues. And it did go out pretty broadly, but yes, please do share it if you have other groups that that may not have received it.
Thank you for that. Other members? I just had a brief, I don't know if they call it thoughts or item. I guess I'd call it participated on the Sound Transit BRT online meeting. I sat and watched it. And there was, I don't know that there's anything that I didn't know before, but it kind of put it together and made me think a little bit. They are rerouting when BRT comes through onto Northeast 185th, and Metro is talking about potentially rerouting there too. And that'll really change the pattern through downtown. There'll be new park and rides somewhere near Popkini, and they also discussed the potential surplusing of the existing park and ride, which is an interesting parcel there. So all things to think about as we move forward. There's more changes in Bothell. So no particular comments on it, but it's interesting to hear it and put it together.
185th was designated as the transit corridor by the city quite a few years ago in consultation with the different transit providers. It will also be used by community transit for their BRT line, the Swift line, the green line that currently goes to Canyon Park. Once the city is able to get the widening done on Bothell Way coming into downtown, now it narrows down right at the county line and then winds through that area. Once that is widened, then the buses will be able to come all the way into downtown, and they'll take 185th over to the campus. So community transit, metro, and sound transit will all be connected to downtown Bothell and the campus. And more importantly, Bothell will be connected to the regional light rail and commuter rail system.
They made reference to removing the street parking on 185th to facilitate transit, so it'll change.
Yes, there will be changes to that street. And also along 98th, because the 522 bus rapid transit BRT line that will run east-west on 522 between Shoreline and Bothell will turn onto 98th and then make that curve onto 185th. So we anticipate the park and ride will be somewhere close to that curve. And I know Pop Keeney is one site they've looked at. The P South city-owned property, which is right across from the Pop, is another site that they've looked at. And we are also in contact with Metro about their park and ride and what their future plans are for that.
So interesting things. Any other comments from members? Seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn? Commissioner Dodd.
I move to adjourn the meeting.
Is there a second? I saw Commissioner Curd first.
I second the motion on the table.
So being moved and second, we'll adjourn this meeting. And I warned Commissioner Robson, this is the shortest meeting we've had in quite some time. So don't think you'll be done at 7:30 every night. So the meeting is adjourned at 7:32. Happy St. Patrick's Day, all.
Thank you all very much.
No.
Thank you. Take care. Good night.
Lanjiba.